Thanks, Svetlana, for this nice introduction. My name is Claudia Schnugg, and I'm talking about art science collaboration. What Svetlana does is actually the correct form, outside tech, or actually also naming all the disciplines and all the different ways how to connect. I use art science collaboration actually more to make it a little bit easier to understand and to talk about it. We also talk a lot about media art and new media art forms, so there's some kind of implication of the technology in there. And I'm also talking about art science collaboration because we have a lot of these examples that Svetlana actually already alluded to take place in the form of residencies, and I really want to put the focus on the collaboration. So not only because you have a residency as an artist at a scientific institute means that you really collaborate. So I really want to focus on this collaboration, and that's why this is the title. This is me, so just a little bit of a background so that you know why I'm talking about this. On the one hand, I'm a scientific researcher and academic, so I studied social and economic sciences, and I specifically also focused in my research a lot on art science collaboration and the question of what is the potential of art in other disciplines? Why is it interesting to bring both of them together? But I'm also working, so I've been writing a lot, so these are a few books and special issues of journals that I've edited. The book Creating Art Science Collaboration I wrote came out in 2019. Actually, I presented it at Trilogia. And since then, my research has also evolved. So the research is a lot about how does it happen? How can we bring together artists and scientists, or artists, scientists, and technology? And how does it actually play out as a benefit to all of the disciplines? So Svetlana already mentioned that you have to translate a lot between the different disciplines. So it's not only an effort of translating, but it's also a gain for everyone because you learn how others would interpret your language. So, and this is not something very banal, although sometimes you think it's very banal in the sense of how do you think about certain words like complexity or the word of just to understand what is light or what is power. If you talk to someone in social sciences, power has completely different meaning as when you talk to someone in physics. But this is something that you need to learn to navigate and to understand, and this is where you find a lot of benefits, and this is also the kind of social scientific and cultural scientific perspective onto art science collaboration that also helps different actors and institutions to understand what is this kind of benefit. And this is my research part. And on the other hand, I'm a curator, and I've been working with art science projects for over 10 years, and I've been producing and curating, still am, over 17 art science projects and artworks. So this is something where I would like to give you a little bit of a glimpse onto my work. I don't have that complex slides because I thought we heard a lot of theory right now. I just wanted to tell you that there is two different sides. So when we talk about art science and art science collaboration, we have both sides. So there is, of course, the process, and the process is something that's super valuable for those who take part, but also for this kind of knowledge generation that Svetlana was talking about, because we have different ways of connecting, and through this kind of connecting, we learn a lot, and we have a lot of this kind of new ideas, new connections popping up. So it's about how do we create different connections between the disciplines, but also for us as individuals. So when we are learned or trained as an artist, we know how to use our tools. But also a scientist knows how to do their scientific lab experiments. But how do we make these connections, and how do we create ideas to link the specific methods that we need to have to come to a certain goal. I'm still very theoretical, I know, but we get to the example soon. But this is actually the very rich process, and this is what we actually need to learn how to talk to each other, and where you need to focus, and where you get actually the depth then for the outcome. And the outcome then can be something transdisciplinary, something that's out of the scope of either artwork or scientific outcome, but it can also be an artwork or a scientific insight, a new scientific question, or what's also happening a lot with the STARTS projects, some kind of innovative idea in terms of talking about innovation for potential startups or industry, or how to turn around certain ways of living or working. Just a little bit more theory. So why is art a special discipline or a special play in that? So first of all, artistic practice is completely opposite to different ways of working in industry or working in science. Because as an artist, you have very much of a synthetic approach. You also try in your artistic research first to ask bigger questions and draw from different disciplines or different insights. Whereas scientists and also engineers are trained to have very specific ways of asking questions and going deep down the rabbit hole. Of course, as artists, you do that too, but you have a different methodology. So having these kind of two different methodologies juxtaposed helps a lot to get the bigger picture. The second point is aesthetics. And I'm not sure, I know you're from New Media Arts, but I guess many of you have different artistic skills and different artistic interests, maybe also working with painting, working with 3D animation, working with VR. So there's this kind of, how do we actually translate what we think or what we feel or what's our idea into something that's experienceable with our senses. It's not only visual, it's with what is actually also the atmosphere that we want to transfer. And this is something that's very important as a component, speaking to science or technologies, because what is the context that you create? How do you transfer ideas? How do you really also read what you know, and what are the visual clues? So it's not only about creating something, but also understanding how I train my own senses. Scientists are often trained to read the data, just in a very visual way, thinking about astrophysicists. Astrophysicists have photographs or data that is calculated into visual representation of the night sky, and they read this data and they learn how to look at it. And this is kind of an aesthetic knowledge, but they are not aware of that. So bringing art and science together is very interesting to understand about aesthetics, and how do you read aesthetics, or how do you create aesthetics. And the third part is the culture, because as artists, you're actually part of culture. You're actually producing culture, and culture is something that connects to society and to a critical, or enables a critical engagement with what's produced in science and technology. And thus, culture is actually the third three key points that is important, or makes art as an important partner for science and technology. And on the other hand, it's the question about the impact that you often get asked, and this can be on any level, on the individual, so the scientist and the artist learn something, or the scientific discipline or the artistic discipline gains, or you have the organization gaining an innovative idea, or you connect to society. And often when you talk about art-science collaboration, you have things about questions about science communication, but it's not only about science communication, it's also about critical engagement with certain topics. And this is where I want to go into a very specific project, where I want to show you the also different kind of production, of artistic production at this intersection. And the project is called Naturarchy. It's just a week ago the exhibition ended in Brussels. It was a big 3 years project, 2.5 years project, 3 years project with including the exhibition, where we produced 13 new artworks about the question how to reconnect in the wake of climate change and all the natural disasters, how to reconnect between science, technology, and society, and how to actually also try to understand it differently, this relationship of the human with the environment, and also of all the needs and the technological needs, the energy needs, or whatever food needs that we have. How can we reconnect or create a different kind of understanding than this kind of the human is on top of the environment? And Naturarchy is also, so it's talking about this through a theoretical lens, and the theoretical lens is the natural contract proposed by Michel Serres. Not sure how many of you are familiar with Michel Serres as philosopher. A little bit. So the idea comes from the question, we're all in law, we are very much used to, and actually also in everyday life, we're very much used to the social contract. So we understand, oh, we go to the dentist and the dentist is supposed to take care of my teeth and not to ruin my teeth. Or I go over the street and I know that there is, the car needs to stop. This is how we interact as people is very much part of this idea of the social contract. The idea here is actually also how can we extend this and have a contract with nature. So how much can we take before it's too much, and not just take as a resource, but also take it as a partner. And this was actually the challenge that we gave to the artists and the scientists. And here just a little bit of information. This is just an exhibition poster. It took place at IMAL. And you see the project was initiated by the SCIAD project at the JRC, the Joint Research Center of the European Commission. And we were 4 curators. So it was Adrian Eckels and Katharina Benincasa from the JRC, Ingeborg Reichle, and me as external curators, where we went through this whole project. Actually, we started with something simple like that, the idea of the thin biosphere that lives on the Earth and how not to destroy it. And this was our starting point for a summer school. So here you can see a little bit of what all the steps there were. So there in 21, we already had the open call. So this is something where we had this natural contract presented as an idea to artists and scientists, and we did an open call to artists who would like to work on that, and invited them then to work with us, or to go or to have a summer school with us in summer 22, where we talked about these issues together with scientists from any discipline at the JRC, and with some experts, maybe from law, from the perspective of ecological law, but also social scientists. We also invited some speakers from indigenous groups, but also people working on design and on new technologies. And from there, we asked the artists and the scientists to find together and to propose projects that we then produced throughout a 1.5 phase of art science collaboration, including some residencies at the JRC, and then presented it at the exhibition. So here you can have a little bit of an overview of the 14 chosen projects. 13 of them were produced in the end. And I will show you quickly all of them, but I will explain a few of them more in detail. But you already have a little bit of an overview of how diverse they are. And also what's behind them. I will tell you more when I go into detail. So the first project actually was also the first when you entered the exhibition. It's by Non-Human Nonsense. The project is called Haunted Waters. And the project is about contamination of natural waters with PFAS. Anyone knows what PFAS is? So it's these long-living chemicals that you barely can get rid of when they are in the water or in soil. And the question was, what Non-Human Nonsense proposed was to have a citizen science project to understand what waters are contaminated all over the world, and then to analyze them with the scientists and understand where, in which regions, which waters are contaminated in which way, but also how this translates into culture. And maybe many of you are aware of this. So in culture, our societies are often very full of fantasy. So often you have a lot of ghosts at places where people should not go because they are contaminated. So that's how this project evolved. So they were asking people about bad stories about where these contaminated waters are. So we've got water from Lourdes, water from Africa, water from New Guinea, and next to, for example, also super contaminated waters next to banana farms. And then they talked to the local communities and tried to better understand what can be done and how actually also regulations, the legislation, also European legislation could positively impact their living. And what they did was, in the end, it turned out like this in the exhibition space. So you have tap water, Brussels tap water, pretty contaminated, but you can drink it. And then you have samples from all over the world with the little ghosts as Pepper's ghosts in the glasses. So the question is, what do you dare to drink? What do you want to drink? And actually, how would you like to approach this? Or what is the reason for, or how could this be approached? And you see the little menu here on the table, and this explains each of these ghosts or cocktails of contamination in different waters, and what's the reason for it, and what could be done at these places. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think I'm taking a lot of time, so I just rushed through the projects. But if you have any questions, just tell me. Another project that was also done with, in a completely different way, but also with citizen engagement, is Margarita Pevere's Lament. This project is about wildfires. So probably most of you know that wildfires are getting more and more due to climate change, to heat waves, droughts in summer. So the risk of wildfires and extreme wildfires is pretty high. And there is a lot of research, of course, at the JRC about wildfires, but actually mainly about protection of cities or where people live, villages, protection of goods like forest industry and agriculture, and warning systems through satellite imaging. But what Margarita was interested in was actually happens on site. What is the really low-level impact on the people, but also on animals and on the soil and on soil regeneration? And interestingly, there was nobody really responsible for that. So in the end, we ended up, I think we went to 5 different groups at the JRC talking about this. Learning about all these different kinds of impacts, also learning that there's not much research in some of the directions that we were looking for, which triggered in the end also a lot of collaboration and new conversations and links between the different research groups, which was a very positive impact. And as I said before, often you have these new connections that are triggered by these questions, by these collaborations. So we had this part, but then how do you translate it actually to something actionable and also something relevant for the people? So what Margareta also, I'm sorry for this really poor image, what Margareta also did is she went with an activist to a place in Portugal where an extreme wildfire happened, to really also learn what people experience during the night, how it sounds, how it feels, and also to, in a performative lecture, to share their scars, because there is a lot about what you see here in the back is actually the scar map of this wildfire, and the scar map is a technical term. Where is the scarring of the fire in the land? But actually the scars go beyond that, because it's also within the people who experience it. It's a very traumatic event, but also within, I think they had 15, so the death toll there was 15 people who were casualties in this fire. So there's a lot that they needed to work on afterwards, but there is actually no handbook for that. So this is what she also worked on with the local people, and then also with a research group to understand how to help people in these wildfires. And what she then did, and they're very grateful because it actually was their first time that 5 years after the wildfire that they collectively reflected on that. And what she then did was she translated it into a performance with Ivan Penov, a musician, where she actually somehow went through, metaphorically went through this whole experience of the wildfire, through the death, but also going into regeneration. And what you see here in these glass pieces, and on the floor is actually the leftover and the exhibition piece. And this is representation of the different stages of the fire. So there's fertile soil, there's burnt soil, there's coal. The glass pieces are inspired by the microscopic shape of a specific moss that is prone to grow after wildfire as one of the first agents to revive the life there. And then there's different pieces in these glass pieces. It's again charcoal, it's burnt pieces, it's seeds, because certain seeds are actually also more likely to grow on these burnt environments. And then she also did, in some of them, an experiment of growing new seeds throughout the exhibition time. So this was the second project that had a lot of citizen engagement, and the third one, which is also more towards science communication, is J.D. Whitman's project, Plastic Magnitudes. And what you see here is actually a very minor version of what she originally wanted to do. She wanted to do a big inflatable out of marine plastic. And she worked with a group of scientists on the effect of nanoplastic on the body, because plastic does not really go. So the question was how to deal with the macroplastic in oceans, because it does not go away. But it's not only the macroplastic that is a problem, so it dissolves into microplastic, and then you have nanoplastic. And when you have nanoplastic, it often even acts like hormones on the body if you intake them, but it acts like hormones on the body also of fish or of seabirds. So what she did was she did a lot of research into that. And if you think about plastic, it's just so huge, and it's very difficult to really get your head around. So what she did was, after her research with the scientists, she went to local communities in Ireland where she did beach cleanups. They gathered all the plastic, they cleaned it, and they created these shapes, these collages. And while these collages are inspired by certain microscopic images of nanoplastic and incorporate all the marine plastic, But while they did this, they were talking about the effects and the problems of microplastic. What are community solutions to do this kind of, to navigate or to avoid plastic in the ocean? And also then to learn about the very specific detail of what it means, scientifically speaking, to intake nanoplastic or microplastic. And she also did a web page about this work with all the details. So you can see how in depth all these different works can go. And I'm aware that I'm approaching my half an hour. So I will be a little bit faster with the other projects, just that you see also what's the diversity of when you ask what is the relationship of society with nature. So it's also very interesting to understand not only what's the depth of each process, but also what's the diversity of artists, or that the artists come up with ideas and proposals when you also talk about different disciplines that they can collaborate with. So what Penelope Kane did is a project with salt and rocks in our veins that originated from her project proposal, The Entanglement of Desert Water. And it's about lithium mining in the Atacama Desert. And this actually very harshly critiques questions about the green transition. So what is actually a green transition, and are we not just aiming for another gold rush in terms of lithium mining, and is this a green way to deal with what we need? Because if we create, or if we have the need for one thing, so it's not saying that we cannot use or we should not use lithium, but it's the question is how to balance and how to create something that, or how to also create a way to extract, or a pace at which we extract, so that.
I mean, not only the pace, we can also negotiate where to mine as well. We can mine in Germany and not.
Exactly. And here the question was also about, everybody is talking about the Atacama Desert as something very remote. So you don't see changes. And this is also something very subtle in this work. So you have 25 minutes to watch one go where the water completely vanishes, because although the Atacama Desert is the driest place in the world, it has water, and lithium mining needs a lot of water. And this is not only the driest place and a very remote place, it's also a cradle for a lot of life, because you have the extremophile bacteria that then nourish the crabs in the water, which are essential for the flamingos and so on and so forth. So you have a complete devastation if you just mine too fast. Of an entire ecosystem. And this is what, and maybe I just also, just go further to another project. Here, what this project also is about. And it's by Kaja Molga, it's the Chronicles from In Between. And this is about, it's more about tech production and how art and tech come together, because we want to admire nature, and we use copper in much of our devices, but also we've used copper in creating paint since the Egypt times. So the question is, what kind of vicious circle are we in what kind of pace we need to mine? Because copper mining and any kind of mining affects local ecologies. And the question is, how much, where is a balance that we can create so that we can have it all? Is it actually possible? But also displaying how through, in this project specifically, through specific mines or specific activities, certain ecosystems are destroyed. So Kaja is telling the stories of 7 places in Europe where mining or tech industry destroys or mitigates ecosystems. And here, this is what we did last year in Timișoara, a first attempt where there's paintings made with the paint made from copper, a few sculptures with the verdigris, copper verdigris, and with specifically computer parts. And yeah, and then you've got these plants that got extinct at certain places because of mining. And what we're doing now is for this year, we create a specific elongated story with certain research also specifically in Romania, where it's not so much about the mining, but actually about the CGI industry and how industries also take over, for example, wetlands and change complete ecosystems. And this then also extends into personal narrative and research. So there's anthropological research and research from the Biology Institute in a certain region, how it changed over the past 70 years through industrial activity, and what kind of plants went missing at these sites, and how people remember these changes. So, and this remembering of the changes is very key to this piece, because this is another aspect that we often just not aware of. There's this concept of landscape amnesia. It's because there is a slow change over time. We are not very much aware of that there is a change. It's just one day after 10 years we wake up, oh, I thought there used to be a wood there, but there is not a single tree left, or things like that. So things start to happen incrementally. And this is also what then, and here it's then played back to the CGI industry actually. It's then presented in a VR headset to, oh, what does it used to be with the story of these elderly people, 80-year-olds that we asked to tell their story about the place, how it looked like and how it changed. So this is another way of what you said, that the mining is, there's so many different kinds of impact of the mining, but also questions, social questions around what is accepted, where do we want to mine, what do we want to mine, what is the pace, what do we get out of it, which kind of, how do we want to ruin the ecosystem around that, or is there actually any question around that? So does a green transition actually 100% support a destruction of a full ecosystem, or is there other ways to find balance? And this actually, although this project is not part of the Naturarchy project, it's the same questions. And again, also engaging with different scientists and local communities. So yeah, so that's the mining part. The natural contract. So the idea for this project and for Naturarchy was really the question of how can we create a way of thinking and a society to think about Earth not only as a resource but as a partner in a contract. So when we think about global industries, there is a lot about extraction. There is a lot about different kind of laws overruling because you need the resources. So maybe overruling local laws because you need to extract petroleum or gas. There is little about how much you can do. So where to stop before you destroy an ecosystem. Of course, there is different legislations in different countries, and it's another thing that you mentioned. So do we want to? And yes, there is a lot of coal mining in Germany still, but do we want to have this kind of? Do we want to have new ways of mining, of lithium mining there as well, or what kind of environments do we want to protect? And how do we want to protect them? And how can we think about nature not only as a resource and not only as our direct environment that we want to protect because of us, but because of nature and because there needs to be a dialogue, because we are rather part of a complex system and we cannot take ourselves out of these complex systems of nature, weather, climate, animals, water. We are not the one rulers that direct it, because it's always a complex system. So if we start to contaminate the water there, or if we start to put in a regulation that the contamination has to be up to this threshold, doesn't mean that we know all the outcomes of what we do. So we cannot take ourselves out of a complex system. So how can we create a new way of interacting and thinking about this?
But how to enforce it? You can everyone, but how do you enforce such thinking?
Yes, so there is exactly. There is, of course, there is a lot of law, ideas about giving rights to nature. There is this movement about rights for nature. But the question here would actually be to go beyond this rights for nature, but actually also create a different way of thinking about how to connect to nature, because giving rights to nature does not yet acknowledge that nature is an equal partner.
Because it's very anthropocentric, actually.
Exactly.
As a person, you give right to the nature, because then you can be very arbitrary about which type of rights.
Exactly. That's the kind of discourse that we wanted to have. And this is also why we maybe also here, sorry for jumping around, but why we also invited the Shipibo-Konibo community to contribute to our discussion. So the Shipibo-Konibo community lives in Amazon region. And there is a very remote community, so they don't have, if you go there, you don't have Wi-Fi, and you live with everyone in a tent, and they're used to the whole family sleeping on one mattress and things like that. And they also live very much in the rhythm of what the Amazon River can give them, and what's the time of the year, what you can do and what you can consume. And we actually sent a scientist, a food scientist, agriculture scientist from the JRC, not to instruct the Shipibo community, but actually the other way around, to learn from them and to understand what's their rhythms, what's their rules, how they connect to nature, and also how Western activity, you see a little bit of plastic here in the river, affects them. And what they do here is actually the typical Shipibo-Konibo kine painting, where they describe about food production. But this was rather, it did not go so much in depth in terms of art-science collaboration, but this is actually also one way where we wanted to acknowledge this. In the summer school, we also invited Ele Maria Eira, a Sami artist, to talk about reindeer herding and how also lithium mining in this region affects reindeer herders. One of the Sami community, one of the last indigenous communities we have here in Europe. So this was also something that it's really, the idea was really to have this kind of idea of law and nature as a broader discussion, of natural contract as a broader discussion. But we also had a legal anthropologist from Scotland. She's originally from Belgium. Her name is Saskia Vermeulen, and she researches how Western law and non-Western law can exist next to each other, and how we can have dialogues with and learn from indigenous laws. So she's, as legal anthropologist, she regularly goes to African communities, hunter-gatherer communities, to understand how they understand land, how they understand property rights, how they understand boundaries and limits of land, and these things, and how these can play out also as a valid partner to yeah, to Western or European law. So these are all the...
European laws don't even care about all of this. This is just like performative artist dancing in the circle, saving the world. Real political change and action doesn't come from this, I think. I don't want to be pessimistic, but that's how I see it.
Actually,
I
if
can see it as a kind of fetishization of these native peoples and stuff like that.
it's not, I would not say so. There is, of course, and also you see this even in when you go to the Biennale in Venice, there is a lot of fetishization of non-Western art, and you often see, and I was this year very, very disappointed about, where was it? Sorry. Very disappointed because I found that sometimes the art is represented at, I'm not sure how many of you went, but many of the artists were just represented because it's their first Biennale or because they are from a certain community, and not so much fitting in the theme of foreigners everywhere because they never migrated to another place in their life. So I found this a bit weird, and this is exactly the fetishization that you're talking about. But in this work, these relations are forever. Gemma Woolmer worked with four scientists, and this legal anthropologist I was telling you about was part of this, and she was dancing the law in a video herself. So Gemma did a video with each of the scientists about their work, creating a ritual, and Saskia's ritual was a dance. And of course, there is a lot of fetishization going on, but there is also very severe approaches on trying to understand it. Of course, there's lobbying, and then there's so many more layers to that, where you cannot say how much it will affect actual lawmaking, but there is real discourse, and this work and also the other work were very, we had quite a few policymakers visiting the show that were very astonished what can be done and how this affects people or how a dialogue can be held. So this is something, of course it's just a first step and something small, and there is many different challenges to be met, also political questions in terms of who reigns and who wants to make a decision and how is this decision to be made. But on the other hand, it's also a question of how you present it and how you lead the dialogue with these communities or with science and art to have a different impact also on society, because society votes for their representation. So the more you have these discussions very much on the bottom with everyone, no matter what kind of education, the more of understanding or actually awareness is there. Because if you're not aware at all, you cannot initiate anything, or you cannot understand what is an opposing view or perspective or an alternative route that might be better to this green transition, to less challenges with climate or whatever. Because if you have only the scientific information and you do not balance this with other critical reflection, because the scientists don't talk to each other, and because you have certain outcomes that are preferred and in media, you have a one-sided view on the topic. But how do you innovate? How do you create something really new? And how do you create knowledge? And that's really about presenting alternatives and creating the opportunity for critical discussion and this kind of learning and experiencing. And this is also the aesthetics, to experience it in so many different ways. And as Svetlana was telling me I should show Tipping Point, this is also something, one of the works, and I end with that, I promise, is about, we know a lot about tipping points, and this work is about tipping points, but it's called the tipping point. It's also this kind of tipping point in society. When is society ready for change? And because also we talk a lot about we want change and we want transition, sometimes it's just not where we want to go because it's not so convenient. So this work is about it, and it's about Jan has created a really impactful work with metronomes, and it's about these metronomes tick. Sorry, I don't have a really good video of the full work, so you just see this one as a video. And the work is about different tipping points, and you have a visualization of the tipping points. And you have, on the left and the right of yourself, you have these ticking metronomes. And the further you get, because this has been done with a scientist who worked also on the IPCC reports. You have the data about biodiversity loss, about coral loss, and so on and so forth. And it's translated into a video animation where you see biodiversity decreasing, for example, or temperature warming, and depending on the data sets between the past 150 years or the past 50 years. And the metronomes tick, and they got faster and faster, and suddenly they stop because you're at the tipping point. And it's a very intense work to be in there, because you have this, okay, it gets faster and faster and faster, and suddenly you're at the tipping point, and we actually don't know what happens after the tipping point. So the question is then how to act, but also how to make people act. And I think this is, maybe this is a good artwork to end with.